You know those little things you do, the little habits and preferences that maybe make you feel a bit different? Well, today we're going to dive into the psychology behind them. Turns out, they might just be signs that you've got a really active and fascinating mind. So let's start with something you might recognize.
So let me ask you this. Do you ever look at your social life and think, my circle's kind of small? Not because you can't make friends, but because you're picky about who you let in. If that sounds like you are definitely not alone.
And that's our first big idea, the psychology behind having really high standards for your friends. This isn't about being antisocial or anything like that. Nope. It's about making a very deliberate choice, even if you don't realize you're making it, about where you want to put your social energy. And check this out. A poll from the No Sense community asked people why some of us have just a few friends. And you know what the top answer was? It wasn't about being lonely or shy. The biggest reason, by far, was that they just have higher standards. So for a lot of people, it's an active choice. So why do people make this choice? Well, it often comes down to a few key things. If you're selective, you're probably more independent. You don't really need a crowd for validation. You probably also need a good amount of alone time just to recharge. Maybe you've had some bad experiences in the past, so you're protective. But most of all, you're someone who values deep, real connections over a long list of casual friends. And this number right here, it really says it all. A poll from Simple Mind Map found that a huge majority of people say they only have between 0 and 3 real friends. So if you're someone who keeps your circle small and tight-knit, you're not an outlier. You're actually in very, very good company. Okay, so that's the social side of things. Now let's pivot and look inward. Let's talk about some of the common habits of people with highly active, high-functioning minds. See if any of these ring a bell for you.
All right, first up, do you ever find yourself talking through a problem out loud? You know, when nobody else is in the room? It might feel a little strange, but let's keep going.
What about your desk or your workspace? Is it, let's call it organized chaos? You know, a system of piles that looks messy to everyone else, but you know exactly where everything is? And how about this one? Do you ever just fall down a rabbit hole on the internet and become an expert on, the history of spoons or something totally random just because you got curious? Well, if you were nodding along to any of those, take a look at this. In another poll, this one from Simple Mind Map, talking to myself and having a messy workspace were two of the most common weird habits people related to. These aren't just random quirks, they're patterns.
And here's the really important part. These habits aren't flaws. Psychologically speaking, talking to yourself is just your brain's way of organizing its thoughts. And that messy desk, it's often linked to higher creativity. These are basically the signatures of a brain that is busy, firing on all cylinders and making all sorts of cool connections.
Okay, now for a quirk that almost everyone can relate to. Seriously, let's talk about that weird brain glitch where you instantly forget someone's name.
Oh yeah, we've all said it. You meet someone new at a party, they say, "Hi, I'm Sarah," and literally 30 seconds later, poof, it's just gone, completely vanished from your brain. So what is going on there? Well, it really boils down to 3 main things. First, there's something called the self-absorbed effect. Basically, when you're being introduced, you're not really listening. You're too busy worrying about what you're going to say next. Second, your brain's working memory is probably already full. A new name is just this random piece of info, and there's no space for it to stick. And third, there's the association gap. The name David has 0 connection to the face you're seeing, so unless you actively create a link, your brain just tosses it out like junk mail. So, when you start to put all these little pieces together, you see a pattern, right? Your social choices, your private habits, even your brain's little glitches. They're not random. They actually form a unique signature of how your mind operates. This is really about the power of flipping the script. What some people might call antisocial is really just being selective and independent. What looks messy might actually be the sign of a highly creative mind at work. And being forgetful? It just means your brain is busy prioritizing what it thinks is most important in that moment. It's like the community over at No Sense says, these are traits of people who think deeper, question more, and see what others miss. Your unique way of seeing the world isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the very thing that helps you have those deep thoughts and creative ideas to begin with. So I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you catch yourself talking to the wall, or you feel a little guilty for wanting a quiet night in, maybe take a second. Instead of judging it, just ask yourself this. What if that thing you think is your strangest quirk is actually your greatest strength?